we have learned about some very specific physical features that are used to identify dinosaurs.
In the same way that physical characters are used to identify dinosaurs, additional physical characters are used by scientists to classify dinosaurs into smaller groups.
I'm Andrew DeJesus.
And I'm Lauren Vagley, and we will be your hosts as we explore dinosaurs from a biblical perspective.
Many kinds of dinosaurs have been discovered that have different traits or characters. Scientists use these characters to classify them into groups based on their similarities and differences. Let's look at some dinosaur groups and the characters that are used to define each group.
The hip structure of dinosaurs is used to divide them into two large groups, the Saurischians and the Ornithischians.
A dinosaur's hip area or pelvis is made of several bones, one of which is called the pubis, shown here in blue. Notice that the pubis has a different shape, is in a different position, and points in different directions in these two diagrams.
Dinosaurs are classified into these two groups according to the direction their pubis bone points.
Dinosaurs that have a forward-pointing pubis bone, toward the ribs and not the tail, are called Saurischians, which means lizard-hipped.
Dinosaurs that have a backward-pointing pubis bone, toward the tail and away from the ribs, are called Ornithischians, which means bird-hipped.
The Saurischian, or lizard-hipped dinosaurs are divided into two groups, the sauropods, which means lizard-footed, and theropods, which means beast-footed.
The sauropod foot is like an elephant's foot with 5 stout toes to hold the huge weight of these long-necked dinosaurs. The theropod foot has 4 toes like a bird. The 4th toe is turned backward, leaving 3 strong toes pointing forward. This design is for creatures needing more speed.
The sauropods were the largest land animals that ever lived. They were quadrupedal, which means they walked on 4 legs. Sauropods had long necks and relatively small heads and brains, and long tails to balance their long necks. They were plant eaters.
Although theropods had 4 limbs, the front limbs were shorter. They were bipedal, which means they walked on 2 legs. Using their long back legs, they could run quite rapidly. Most theropods were carnivores, which means they ate meat. Their sharp teeth, strong jaws, and claws helped them to catch their prey.
Let's review what we have learned so far. Dinosaurs are divided into 2 groups based on their hip structures, the Saurischians and the Ornithischians.
The Saurischian, or lizard-hipped dinosaurs, are divided into 2 groups, the sauropods, which were herbivores, or plant eaters, and the theropods, which were carnivores, or meat eaters.
These 2 groups are subdivided into many smaller groups based on specific characters that make them different from one another.
The Ornithischian, or bird-hipped dinosaurs, are also divided into smaller groups, all of which were herbivores.
In our next episode, we will look at some different groups of Ornithischian dinosaurs and the characters that make them different from other dinosaurs. But first, let's look at a diagram that shows different kinds of dinosaurs. Diagrams like this one are called cladograms.
Scientists classify dinosaurs, as well as other animals and plants, into groups that share certain traits or characters. The characters are used to define each group.
A cladogram is a diagram showing different groups of animals or plants.
It organizes them according to their shared characters and the characters that make them different from one another. To understand how to read a cladogram, let's refer back to what we already learned about diapsids, archosaurs, and dinosaurs. Notice how the creatures and their traits are organized in this chart.
Each of these 3 groups has certain characters that make them different from other groups, but they also share some characters. Diapsids are a group of creatures that have 2 temporal fenestrae on each side of their skulls.
Since archosaurs are diapsids, they have 2 temporal fenestrae, but they also have a fenestra in front of each eye, called the antorbital fenestra.
Dinosaurs have 2 temporal fenestrae because they are diapsids, and the antorbital fenestra because they are archosaurs. They also have a fully open acetabulum, plus some additional characters that other archosaurs don't have.
This kind of information, both the traits that are shared by different groups, as well as the traits that make a group unique, can also be shown on a cladogram. The cladogram helps us organize these creatures according to their similarities and differences.
In the next episode, We will look at a cladogram showing different dinosaur groups and the characters that define each group.
See you next time!